Well, hello everyone. Happy Monday. I'm Stephanie Solomon, and this is the Winning Ways Show. And we had some technical difficulties for those of you who were trying to log on at 7, but they have been ironed out, and here we are. Not going to give any more attention to that matter than it deserves, which is none. Well, I'm excited tonight because I have a guest. And if you are new to the Winning Ways podcast, I'm an author. I've been podcasting since 2010, basically on the audio platform. And this year, I ventured out and evolved into this whole YouTube world of audio and visuals. So here I am. But basically, my podcast centers around teachings from my books. There's always something to talk about. And occasionally I do have authors that have stories and belief systems that are in alignment to the Winning Ways podcast. And tonight I'm excited to have an author, Joyce Mason. Joyce is not only an author like I am, but Joyce is also a life coach like I am. And so, what I need you to do, folks, especially those of you on the YouTube side, as I'm trying to grow the community on that side, I need you to click the subscribe button, and I need you to click like, and I need you to get engaged. Yeah, I need you to do all of that. And for your life coaching needs, my niches are family dynamics and forgiveness. All right. And so you can check me out at www.stephaniebooks.com. There's a free consultation and we can see if we are a good fit. All right. So we're going to get right into it. If you've been listening to my podcast the last several months, you'll notice that I really have been big on mental health and emotional health. If you follow me, even on social media, Instagram particularly, that's my favorite of them all. I post a lot on wellness, especially emotional wellness and mental awareness and mental wellness and soul care, as well as self-care. And I've done a series on self-care, how forgiveness is a part of self-care. Well, I'm going to venture out into an area that I'm not an expert on, and neither is my guest, but it's a subject matter that needs to be talked about. We're going to be talking about depression tonight. And my guest has her own experience, her own journey, and she's going to share with us some aspects of it. And I just want everyone to get ready to meet her. Her name is Joyce Mason. Welcome, Joyce.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you, Stephanie, for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, I'm glad to have you. Joyce has written a book, and the title is, make sure I have this correct because I'm reading it upside down. Joyce, what is your title? Because I was reading it upside down and then it just went away.
Depression to Deliverance, my
Okay.
journey through a troubled mind.
I'm glad I had you say it because I was going to have it scrambled all up there. I was going to hear depression and journey all there. But, and I see people are jumping on. And what I need you to do, thank you for joining us tonight. Feel free to comment, and I'll be posting the comments if they are kind. So, Joyce, tell us a little bit. First of all, I want to say this to the audience, and I put this disclaimer on my own website. As a life coach, I am not a clinician. I'm a certified life coach, but not a clinician. They are not the same. A
Mm-mm.
therapist, a counselor, psychiatrist, that's not what life coaches are. Life coaches are not regulated, so we don't have the same certifications, prerequisites, expectations, requirements that those other mental health workers have to have according to the state guidelines and what have you. However, as a life coach, we do encounter individuals who have certain characteristics and behaviors in their emotional realm and patterns that we notice. Now, we do not diagnose, that is not what we do, and we do not offer treatments for emotional and mental health matters and conditions. However, depression, which is a clinical term, is very real. Joyce, tell us about, first of all, how you were um, how were you diagnosed, first of all, as a depressive individual?
Well, I was having so many episodes of anxieties and panic attacks and depression. And I was going through it just me and my husband. We didn't know what it was at the time. So as I continued to have episodes and go to the emergency room, and they tell me that nothing is wrong with me when I knew I was having these attacks. So I talked to my mom about it, and she suggested that I go see my doctor. And once I went to see my doctor, of course, they did blood work and they came back and said that I had a chemical imbalance. And so they put me on medication. And that's when things started to get better for me as far as the depression. And then I was able to handle it better once I knew what it was.
Can I ask?
Sure.
Didn't like that. Okay, I don't know where that's coming from. Um, when you say an episode, what do you mean by that?
I would get really anxious. I would get overwhelmed. I would start to sweat. I would have palpitations. I would have trouble breathing. But I never had any pain. But I had this overwhelming feeling that something bad was about to happen. Actually, I thought for several occasions that I was about to die.
Wow. Now, do the okay, the episodes, because those are characteristics. Is that are they common to everyone who would suffer from depression? The anxiety, the feeling of dread, all of those are common characteristics of a depressive state.
Yes, they are. And not wanting to get out of bed, not wanting to even bathe, not wanting to eat, not wanting to be around anybody. And to be honest, not even wanting to be around yourself because you're going through so many emotional thoughts and feelings that if you don't know what it is, you don't understand it. And a lot of people don't understand it. Excuse me. A lot of people don't understand it. And so um, it's a stigma out there about mental health illnesses already. And when you don't understand what's going on, it's hard for you to tell somebody else what's going on with you as well.
When did you start? Okay, I don't know why there's an echo. I really don't. When did you start experiencing these feelings? Was it as an adult, after childbirth, as a child?
Well, in the beginning, I saw a lot of mental health issues in my family, but I didn't know what it was.
Well,
And so I
let's
began.
stop you right there. When you said you saw in your family, what you saw in your family, was it what you just described?
Yes, except when I saw it with my mom, she had actually had a nervous breakdown. One day I came home from school and I came inside the house and she had her head in this record player. It was a component set. It was real long back in the day. And when she raised up, her eyes were big as saucers and her hair was standing on her head. And she didn't speak at all. And she was never the same after that. But that's when I realized something was wrong with her. But again, in our house, we didn't talk about those things. What goes on in the house stays in the house. So if I didn't talk about it, I didn't know that she had actually had a nervous breakdown. And once before that, I saw it in my family. It was a family member who was sitting on the rooftop of the house, which was a flat rooftop and she had white stuff all over her, which was flour. I didn't know it was flour. And she had had a nervous breakdown. And that's all my mom said. Well, she had a nervous breakdown, and some people came and got her and took her away, and I didn't see her anymore after that. Then my mom had hers. And so I have always had uh, situations And it seemed like I would do it monthly. I would have episodes every single month. Well, I thought that it was due to my cycle, that my emotions were up and down all the time. But once I got diagnosed, then I was able to handle it and deal with it more um, better than I was before. One thing that helped me a lot is to get a cold rag and put on the nape of my back or on my forehead, and that will help me to calm down. And because I had so many episodes, it's like, don't go to the emergency room anymore because they're going to just tell you the same thing. There's nothing wrong with you. When I knew it was something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But I knew that it was nothing, no pain was associated with it. So I knew I wasn't having a heart attack, but it made you feel like that's what you were having outside of not having the pain.
So, where is this echo coming from, Lord? Um, let's get back to the family. You witnessed your mother
Mhm.
having this before you had episodes. You witnessed
Yes.
someone else having, and you said something about the roof. I didn't know what I was witnessing as a child. I saw a neighbor, the same, almost the same situation, um, on my way to the store, and there was a woman buck naked on the roof talking to herself, going back and forth, and eventually the police came, whatever. And I never forgot that. Now when I
Right.
look back at it, and we had heard stories growing up about the girls, but people weren't very kind back then. They would call you literally crazy. That's what
Hmm.
happened. And I remember that. And as you just said that story, that's exactly, I mean, she didn't have flowers, she was just buck naked. And it was, I know I was in elementary school when I saw that impression. It was years, well, actually, when I was about 4 or 5, my mother had an episode. And I still to this day remember um, the goings ons because we, at the time of, there were 3 children and we were taken from the home and put in foster care. And
Oh.
I remember, but you said something very interesting. And I remember aunts coming over. I remember visiting my mother in the institution. I remember her father, her brothers, all there. Um, you mentioned something about the family knowing this, and you're right. What goes on in the house stays in the house. How do your family members express themselves, if at all, now with you being open and vocal about your experience, which it happened during their lifetime as well? How is that? Is it received? Is it shunned? It's like, how dare her tell our business? What are the ramifications of you being vocal for your healing?
Right. And that's important, Stephanie, because um after I wrote the book, I had talked to my mom and I told her that I was going to share what affected me
Mm-hmm.
and had me in depression and anxieties and having a panic attacks. It wasn't about anybody particular in the book, but it was about
Mm-hmm.
me and my healing.
Right.
And it was a few people that said things about the book that were negative, and they felt like I didn't need to put that in there or
Mm.
what I should have put in there. And I said to them, I said, it wasn't necessarily about the people, it was about my experiences and what affected me and had me depressed and had me having panic attacks and anxieties because I come from a family of abuse. My mother's husband abused her, and that affected me personally.
Mhm.
And so I did get a lot of feedback that was positive, but I told them that the book was for my healing. And I pray that it's for someone else's healing and want people to know that you're not alone, that you're not crazy, that there's nothing wrong with you because you have a mental health challenge. And that's what it is. It's a challenge. We
Mhm.
live with it, but we can still thrive and become authors, life coaches. We can become lawyers and doctors, whatever it is that we want to be, in spite of our diagnosis. Because depression doesn't have me, I have it, but I know how to control it now.
Mm-hmm. 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 That is very critical because you said something very interesting. You said that the writing was for you. In other words, I understand that as an author, uh, it can be therapeutic, you know. And one of the things that I think people need to understand, especially in the community of African Americans, is that there are cultural issues that we have. We know we got racism and a whole lot of other systemic things against us, but there are things that we have against ourselves, and one of them is the outlook that we have on mental illness. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to be in a straight jacket and looking crazy and having slime coming out of their mouths or whatever, because mental illness can look like someone just very calm on the outside, the exterior,
Mhm.
but being very anxious internally and being very sad and feeling very, because depression is really beyond sad. It's like what you said, not enjoying yourself, not enjoying the moment, those types of things, but putting on a face. We have functional alcoholics, we have functional drug addicts, and they get their job done. They parent, they drop the kids off, they cook, but they're still addicts. We have
Yes.
functional gamblers, we have functional shopaholics, and we have people who have mental illnesses that are not on this far left, far right spectrum, but they're on the spectrum and they're functioning every day. So people think nothing's wrong, that they're okay.
Right.
And then later on, we hear something like, so and so committed suicide, or so and so did this. And we're like, what? I just talked to him, or I just talked to her, and
Hmm.
everything was fine. No, not, it was never fine. Or
Right.
it hasn't been, I'll put it this way, it hasn't been fine for a long time. And I think that the ignorance of individuals, it's ignorant to say what goes on in this house stays in this house because it perpetuates the problem. It's
Right.
not like it doesn't exist. And things like this, whether it's mental health or even a physical ailment or disease, has to be discussed because it could be inherited.
Absolutely.
One of the things, I worked on a committee in my sorority a few years ago, and it was a committee that did research for African Americans to study, to be a part of research so that they could be studied. Of course, blacks and medicine don't have a loving relationship, so there's a
Hmm.
lot of skepticism. However, these were black individuals encouraging blacks to be a part of the research because we are the most underserved, because there's very little that we know or that doctors know because there hasn't been research done.
Right.
And when the research was done, of course, it was wrong. So there's the skepticism, but that research has to be done so that we can see, like you said, a chemical imbalance. That could be something that is inherited, and we won't know that unless we do the research, proper research.
Right.
So the
That's
whole
true.
thing. Yeah, you mentioned about the abuse. If you don't mind me asking, what type of abuse was it?
He would physically abuse her.
Mhm. And how
Um,
did that impact you?
ooh, it had me terrified because at one point he said that he would kill all of us,
Mm,
and it was four of us. In that particular situation, he was fighting her, and she got away, and she ran in the bathroom, and he went after her. And so all four of us tried to attack him, and that's when he said he would kill all of us. It has it has impacted me to the point where I have never been a fighter. Um, People could do and say anything to me or about me, and I would just cry. And to a certain extent, I'm still like that. I have very soft feelings. Um, so I knew that I was not going to get in a relationship where a man was going to put his hands on me in that way,
mhm.
and I stuck by that. Um, but it has made me more sensitive to other people in their relationships if I come across that kind of situation. So I'm grateful for that. But it really messed me up because back in those days, after they would fight or after you would get beat up on, you would be intimate afterwards.
Isn't that
And I
crazy?
could never figure that part out.
Yeah.
How could you beat me and then want to be intimate with
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
And so that really stuck with me and made me realize that that was not a life that I wanted. And I love my mom, and I'm not putting her on blast or anything like that,
Right.
but it affected me in a negative way, and so I had to talk about it. And if we don't talk about these things, we'll never get those doors closed or shut or those curses broke because we don't want to share what happened.
And there's cycles
Yes,
because they get repeated. Because you said something interesting. You said after the abuse, you really act like nothing never happened. So that to me, that makes it easier for the abuse to happen again.
yes,
Because how do you not address that? How do you not address, wait a minute, I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve to be cursed out. I didn't deserve to be called out of my name. And I like what you said. There's a fine line when you're telling your story. That's, we're not telling someone else's story. However, what they did impacted me.
yes,
And so I'm telling my story. And that's why I asked you earlier about the 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 offshoot, the consequences of you kind of like coming out, with this. What was that like? Because some people do take it personally. Like you said, I'm not outing her or whatever, but that was the family. Now she can tell her story and why she did and how she felt, but all that happened impacted you. And
yes,
you're telling your which how things happened and what you saw and what you felt for you lens. I like the part where you said you made a decision that that was not how you were going to live. I can relate to that. When I was younger, I felt when you're a child, you adapt, even with the abuse. And there are different levels of abuse. Everybody's not beating up people. There's cursing, cursing at your children. I personally think that is one of the worst things to do. Calling them out of their name. You gave them a legal name and you call them out of their name. But there's emotional abuse. There's psychological abuse. But I, even as a young child, I always didn't know how, but I knew what I was not going to do.
right.
And I knew that I would find a way to continue to better myself. And even at 65, I'm still working on self improvement. I think that's ongoing. But I always knew that whatever I pursued, it would be different from what I knew. And I think that's very important. Some people lose that. They lose it from the abuser, and they lose it because of I talked about this a few sessions ago. Toxic loyalty.
Mm,
Toxic loyalty. I'm loyal to this family because we're related through DNA. You know,
yes,
we're crazy together. We had this cycle, generational cycle of abuse. And just because we here together. You know, um, I made up in my head that would not be my life. Um, That's hard for a lot of people. And I can see how depression could set in over time,
yes,
especially when you feel that there's no way out
yes.
and
And even
you
I'm
don't
sorry.
know you don't know how to get out. You don't know how to move forward.
Right.
You don't know how to navigate. And as children, I see that you mentioned your childhood here, and we've been talking a little bit about that. As children, we tend to adapt. We come up with ways that work for now. And everybody does it differently. Some withdraw, some act out. People do different things. And the sad part is, if we're not careful, when we get old enough to move and shake and bake on our own, we'll take those adaptive behaviors into adult relationships.
Yes.
And then we have maladaptive behaviors, they call it. And
Yes.
then we're wondering, how come these relationships are awkward, they're toxic, they're dysfunctional? Because we brought in a lot of what we did that worked as a child into adulthood, and that doesn't work anymore. You know,
Right.
so I like what you talked about breaking the cycles. You talked about the abuse, you talked about your daddy drama.
Well,
Talk
we
about,
really didn't get into the daddy drama.
well, okay, so I heard about the abuse. So go ahead, tell me a little bit about the daddy drama and how that contributed to um, your depression.
My mom wasn't married to my dad. He
Mm-hmm.
was not in my life. Um, and so when he would come around, that would be a situation for her to get beat up because my
Mm,
stepfather thought that they were still seeing each other. So my dad and I never ever lived together, never had a really good relationship. I got pregnant with my first son, um, Antoine, when I was 15 years old, and my husband was 16. And my dad came to our house. We were living on, well, I'm not gonna say where we were living, but he came there and he threatened my boyfriend at the time. He wasn't my husband. And I said to him, "You have no right to do that. You haven't been in my life. Where have you been?" And I
mm,
know that my mom got beat when he came around, so he wouldn't come. My thing was they corners that you could have met me at to visit with me, to see me. Um, and the thing that really hurt me about my dad is, I said this in the book, that he didn't give me away at my wedding. He told me that he couldn't afford the tuxedo that I wanted him to wear. And that tore me up. That really set me back because you never gave me anything,
mm.
nothing. And all I wanted you to do was walk me down the aisle.
So
And you
how do
couldn't
you
do that.
see? So how do you see that
I
contributing
can't
to
hear
your
you,
depression?
Stephanie.
I'm sorry.
I can't hear you.
So we're on.
You can hear me, but I can't hear you.
All righty. Don't know why that is. Well, I tell you, this broadcast must really be doing something.
Goodness.
Let's see
Say
here.
something else because I hear you now.
Okay. I said this broadcast must be really doing something.
It's the devil is
Yeah.
busy.
Okay. So we have someone saying that telling our story, sometimes we have to forget about others to free ourselves. And I think that's so true because oftentimes we consider others over us. And
Right.
when we're considering others, it would be different if we were considering, I think it would be different if we're considering maybe not saying something because the person can't handle it or whatever. But if it's for my healing so that I can grow and help others to grow. If you want to stay stuck there, that's on you. But some people are in love living a fake life. But
Yeah. But the
but
part I don't think I got a chance to tell you that
mm-hmm,
my sister got married after me,
mm-hmm,
one of my sisters, and I love my sisters to death, and I'm not putting them on blast either. But he gave her away,
of
and
course. Yeah,
he
of
had a
course.
top hat, he had a cane, he
Of
had
course. Yeah. And you know what that is too when you look back at it, right? That is a form of manipulation. That's I'm not going to call it narcissism because I'm not a clinician, but it is a form of control. And I'm showing you that I could have done it because I did it with this one. I could have done it with you. I could have done it with you. But that is a form of control. It's mental abuse and emotional abuse. And that was something done to remind you of who you are to him. And creating, and I've seen this in families where a parent will play children against each other. And so, I'm going to attend this event for this one, and you could have attended events for this one or that one as well. But this is a way that you now get the kids to start questioning each other. It's a person who wants control because you're creating chaos. And
right.
for many people, that's his probably his way of, you know, creating these cycles of chaos. It keeps him at the center of attention also. See, as an educator, one of the things we used to notice, like when kids would act out, some kids would act out because they got attention, and for them that was the only attention that they got.
Right.
And so doing this still gives him attention. It makes him relevant. He thinks it makes him relevant. You've gone on, you moved, you have a real man in your life. He knows that he wasn't that great example, but I'm going to still show you that I can harm you. It's all about control by not doing this and that for you, because I know that's what you want from me. And people
Right.
like that always want to know what you want. So if he knew what you wanted, and so I'm going to let you down. And that still makes me the center of discussion. I'm the center of discussion. Even if it's a bad discussion, I'm still the center.
Right.
And that's
And but you know, I did forgive my dad. He's no longer with me. I love him. I miss him. And I'm grateful that we were able to mend
mm,
all the hurt. We sat down one day in the living room and I told him everything that he's done and didn't do and how it made me feel. And we were
mm.
able to get past it. And he left here knowing that I loved him and that I forgave him. And I was the firstborn. They can't take that away from me. I don't care what happens. I was the firstborn. But I say
Well,
that
let's give him credit for being open enough to receive what you said.
he did.
Because there's some people who will not receive that.
He
You know,
did.
it would be everyone's fault but theirs. But
Right.
give kudos and hats off to him
Yes.
to be able to receive it.
Yes. He
You
did.
know,
And he told me, baby girl, you will always be my
yeah,
firstborn. I love you. And we got past it. So I'm grateful for that.
perfect. Well, going to take a brief break, and then we're going to come back and talk about just this whole piece of relationships and how that impacted your depressive aspect of your journey. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.
Hey, Scholar, whose book are you reading now?
I'm enjoying a great reading by Stephannie Solomon. Her conversational writing style, disciple-centric themes, and liberal approach to topics is such a blessing to me. She's so on point.
Wow, she sounds like someone I want to hear, and her book's like something I need to share with my book club.
You know, her books are accessible through all electronic mediums and at the brick-and-mortar booksellers, and you can hear her on her weekly blog talk radio show.
I take it she's on Twitter and other social networks?
Yes, and she's funny, too.
Sounds like the author and her books have great personality. I'll be getting my copies today.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in. And I thank you for the comments that are being posted as well. I am Stephannie Solomon, and this is Winning Ways with Steph. And I hope that you're being blessed by my guest today, Joyce Mason, who is really leading and being a part of a great conversation on depression from her wonderful book. Let's look at relationships, because you really dealt with you really shared a bit much with your father, the relationship with your father, and how all that he did. It seemed like there was conquering there, but you still had depression pop up in your life in other areas. You talk about the loss of your son, and share a little bit how that affected you and how you think it could be a common element with other people losing a child, period.
Mm. It was the 4th of July, 2013. I had went up the street to visit. Well, actually, I went up the street to get my car because parking is horrible where I live. And so I was going up there to get the car. And as I was standing on a neighbor's porch, I could see 2 police officers going up to my front door. And I saw the badges and everything. And I was like, what they going to my house for on the 4th of July? So as I began to walk down the street, my youngest son came to the door, and he's a jokester. He was like, oh, Ma, you in trouble? And I started to move a little faster, like a jog, getting to the house. And he said, Miss Mason, I need to speak to you. And I said, not until my husband come downstairs, because I didn't know what they wanted. So long story short, he said, I don't know how to tell you guys this, but your son was murdered. I began to scream. My youngest son went downstairs. My husband went back upstairs. I went back out the front door, back to the neighbor house where I saw them in the beginning. And I just began to scream and holler and cry, and passed out on the sidewalk. He was in a fight with a young man, and the young man stabbed him 7 times. This happened in Essex, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning. He was preparing to go on a trip the next day, so he was washing clothes. Um, but he left out of the house that he was in and went knocking on other people's doors trying to get help. And of course, nobody wanted to open their door 4 o'clock in the morning. So he bled on a lot of people's porches. It was on the news. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. But he died outside underneath a light post. That was the worst experience that I could ever experience in my life, and one I would never want to experience again. A parent losing a child. If the child was sick, that's something different, but for someone to take his life, and I began to question God. I began to question myself. I began to question why did it happen? How did it happen? Why? And just like I'm talking to you, Stephannie, I was talking to God, and he said to me, was your son any more important than my son who died on the cross for me, for you? And when he said that, all I could do was cry. I did want to commit suicide. I wanted to be with my son. I told my girlfriend, call my doctor and tell him I need some medicine because I couldn't sleep. But I really couldn't sleep. But I wanted the pills so that I could commit suicide. I wanted to be with him. He was our love child. That was our firstborn. He was 32 years old. He was married. He had 3 kids. And it was just devastating. I also asked God, I said, he died by himself. He said, no, he didn't. He said, I was right there when he took his last breath. And we went through the court system. The young man got 6 years. He did 4 in jail, and then he did 2 on the box. But when I went to court, I walked in there and I faced him and I told him, I said, I forgive you for what you did to my son. I had to release him in order for me to be released.
Yeah.
Because I know I have not murdered anybody, but I have sinned and fall short of God's glory each and every day. And so in order for me to get forgiveness, I had to forgive. But what really impacted me was when his mom came up to me and put her arms around me. And she said, I am so sorry for what my son did to your son. She said, I had a son that was murdered as well. And that really gave me peace. That gave me peace, but not instantly. It took some time. I was a daycare provider at the time of his death. I shut the daycare down for 6 months. I had nothing to give those kids because everything I had in me was gone. When Antoine left here, it took a lot of me with him. And so I didn't want to take those parents' money, knowing that I could not provide for those kids the way that I should. And so I shut the daycare down. And everybody was saying, you need to go back to work. You need to focus. You need to do this. Don't tell people what they need to do. I know what I needed to do. I needed to rest and I needed to get my mind right because I was in a really bad place. And you talk
Well,
about depression.
Yeah.
I went days without even taking a bath. And I'm not ashamed to say it. That's how deep I was in the depression. All I could do was cry. I couldn't even be intimate with my husband. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I had to take knives out of the house. I couldn't watch movies that had knives in it because he was stabbed. But to God be the glory for the great things he has done. He is a miracle worker. He is a heart regulator. I am free. I know where my son is. He is in the bosom of Jesus Christ. I have no worries. I have no, I'm good. I am in a good place, really good place. And so I thank God for where I am now because I'm talking about it and I'm not breaking down. I did go to Roberta's house and get grief counseling, which was a tremendous blessing to me and my family. I don't know what they got out of it, but I got a lot out of it. And so I'm able to
Roberta's house,
manage.
Roberta's house is awesome. I've had the director, Dorinza Thomas,
Mm,
on this broadcast. They do a great work
yes.
with grief counseling. Mm,
Wonderful. And now I am a counselor as well at Roberta's house. So
mm.
I'm grateful for where I am, Stephanie. I have no complaints. Even in spite of the depression, the anxieties, I know how to handle them now. I know how to move with them. I know how not to let them overtake me. And so I'm in a good place.
Mhm, mhm. And that took, I like, as a forgiveness coach, I like what I heard you say about the forgiveness. Um, Oftentimes people think that forgiveness is all about reconnecting, access, even reconciliation. And reconciliation can come out of forgiveness, but it doesn't have to. As you said, forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is for the person who's been afflicted, offended, wounded
Yes.
by the actions of someone else. And the fact that you could do that to someone who took away the life of someone so valuable to you, I believe that was definitely the initiation of healing for you,
Yes.
because forgiveness is an act of healing oneself. It really works to heal. I mean, and yes, it heals relationships and whatever, but the offended one has to be willing to let go. And that is not an instant process. And it doesn't work the same for everyone. And it doesn't look the same for everyone. And again, it doesn't mean that you and the offender are going to be buddies and hanging out, because
Absolutely.
you and your son's killer aren't. I mean, now there are instances where something like that may happen,
Hmm.
but it does not mean it has to happen, because there are people, if we're not careful, they will try to guilt us, shame us, and even bully us into thinking that that must be what we see in order for you to have forgiven somebody, and those kind of things. It's very manipulative and controlling as well. But I like the fact that um, you were open enough to understand that you wanted to be healed and you wanted to be made whole. And that could only happen if you forgave the person who contributed, as someone says, yes, forgiveness sets us free. Exactly. And it may take a minute, it can take a while. There's no time frame, you know, but we have to be willing to work through the process. And the process can be arduous. Yes, it can be very difficult, because you're constantly reminded, the body, the mind wants to constantly bring up and resurface what he said, she said, what they didn't do, blah, 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 blah. But that just keeps us stagnant and in this dark hole, in this rabbit hole. But I like the
Right.
fact that you wanted to be healed so bad that you did the hardest thing. You did the work. And oftentimes people don't want to put in the work, and forgiving someone so that you are free, not them, you are free. But I have learned something, that for some people who have a conscience, when they know that you have forgiven them, they do become freer too, because some people are tied in the fact that someone hasn't forgiven them, and even that they have to learn to move on. But our forgiveness of ourselves can work on other people as well. We can really go on and on with this. And I'm going to bring this to a close. I think I read you said this is an ongoing journey for you. Some people might look at this and say, well, how can you talk about something that you're still dealing with? What do you say to that?
Well, because it's something that I'm living with and I have to deal with, it's a daily chore. It's just like getting up, brushing my teeth, and putting on clothes and all that. I'm talking about it because I want people to know that you're not alone. and that you can thrive and be all that you want to be in spite of your diagnosis. Like I said earlier, just because I suffer with depression and anxiety, does that make me somebody that can't succeed in life? Absolutely not. You can do anything that you choose to do in spite of whatever it is that you're dealing with. So I would say stay the course. Do what you have to do. Practice self care. That is very important. I don't care what it is that you feel like self care is for you. If it's taking a bubble bath, if it's reading a book, if it's just sitting listening to music, practice self care because we're not okay and we can't take care of other people if we're not okay ourselves. So self comes first, and it's not selfish to think of yourself first
Mhm.
because we give and we give. We're mothers, we're wives, we're sisters, we're girlfriends, and we just give, give, give of ourselves until we're so empty. But we have to start filling ourselves with love, with joy, with peace, with happiness. We got to know who we are, what makes us happy, what makes us smile. We're going to have situations in our lives that come up. We're going to have things that hurt our feelings. We're going to have people that we thought was in our corner that's not in our corner. So what? Be authentically you, who you are. Know who you are and stand on who you are. And in spite of whatever the obstacle is that you're facing, you can make it. I'm a testimony that no matter what you go through, you can still smile. You can still give God the praise. You can still lift him up because he is worthy. And I am here today because of him.
I like that. You know, there is so much to add here. There's so many things I would like to continue to. I can't even read this one. To say I'm trying to share some of these comments. They've been awesome. Paul said that I have not yet apprehended, but press. That's what you are doing. Awesome. That's what
Thank
you are
you.
doing, sis. Good. God bless. And I am so proud of you.
To
That's
God be the glory
that's
because it's
Stephanie
not me.
Jefferson. And we have Claudia Johnson who says someone needs to hear this now. Well, Claudia, if you don't mind sharing this, I'm sure on your platform that um, there'll be people who definitely um, can benefit from this. Okay, yeah, this has been awesome. This is great. This is oh, this is the first time I got crazy comments. Oh, this has been a blessing from the beginning with the technical difficulties to this. This is
Praise
great.
God.
We have another person. I think this is Lavoidus says that forgiveness sets us free. Claudia again says it's powerful. Stephanie, to God be the glory. Thank you guys so much for contributing with your comments. There's just so much power. I love how you pulled from different aspects of your life. You definitely have a winner as a husband.
Yes, he
I like
is.
because you said something that let me know he's a winner. He's definitely a keeper. When the police were at the door and you said you wanted them to tell you the news after your support system was right there. You weren't even trying to hear this without
Mm-mm.
your anchor,
Right.
and that speaks volumes.
Yes.
Oh my God, that speaks
Yes.
volumes. So you
We have been together for so long, Stephanie. We know each other in and out since
Mhm.
we were 12 and 13 years old.
Beautiful. But and look at how you were blessed despite of what your beginnings were, and what you saw, how the family dynamics with couples, what you saw in your presence. You didn't relive that. And
Mm-mm.
I always tell people you have choices. You don't have to relive it. I don't care
Right.
how dismal, how chaotic, how whatever your beginnings or your middle, or you have as long as you have agility, you can move forward, and the God we serve gives us resources. Will it
Yes.
always be easy? No. I'm not going to sit up here and act like it's not. But we can make the choice and choices to say, I may not know how I'm going to get there and how it's going to look, but it won't look like that. And
Amen.
this is not to put people down, but at the same token, it's not to we taking responsibility, for our future. We're taking responsibility for your children, for your grandchildren, because they're watching.
Yes.
We teach more in what we do and don't say than what we say out of our mouths.
Right.
And we have children, other generations who are watching by example, and all they know is what they see. So I commend you so much, and you're doing other work in the community. How can people find you and connect with you, like on social media or website? Do you have any of that to share with us, your listening and viewing
Yes.
audience?
Yes. If you would like to contact me, you can contact me at jamcoaching2021 at Gmail, or you can get me on Facebook under Joyce Mason. Also, I have a monthly Zoom meeting on Facebook every month. You can catch me on that. It's the second Monday of every month. And also, this is my book. You're not going to be able to see it. It's not going to come up.
Because of the green
Background.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can contact me either way at Jam Coaching, or either, I don't mind giving you my phone number. It's 410-624-9670. I have books available if anyone would like to purchase them. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity. I just love being able to help people and to encourage people. That's one of my gifts. And I do it well. I'm not bragging, but he gives all of us gifts. And mine is to encourage people in spite of what they may be going through.
Awesome. Well, I am. Oh my goodness. I am so grateful that you said yes, and going to have you on again. And I don't know what these technical whatevers are. I'm not going to let that, we're going to still post this, and we're going to talk again, especially while you're working at the Birders house. We deal with a lot with grief.
Yes.
And grief is not always the death of a loved one. It could be just loss of a lifestyle. We're grieving a lifestyle,
Right.
grieving a dream
Yes.
lost, a
Loss
dream,
of a job.
a dream deferred.
Right.
People are dealing with a lot, and people need to hear that because the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. And I believe it's in Second Peter. I'm not sure where. And then correct me, or someone lead me to where it says that our brothers and sisters endure the same things that we're going through. So oftentimes we think, especially when the enemy wants to put us in isolation, and to think we're the only ones enduring this plight. But we need to hear that there are other people who have done it, are doing it, are going through it rather, and they're winning. And they can tell us that pain is a part of the journey. They can tell us that depression may be a part of the journey. And they can tell us that we can still win. This is the Winning Ways podcast.
Yes.
This is about victory.
Amen.
I really and that's one of the reasons why I gravitated to you, because I saw a victorious lifestyle.
Thank you.
You had all these things happening. You still have something going on, and you're determined to win.
Yes.
Yeah, the victorious lifestyle. I'm attracted to that. I am attracted to it. Ever since I was a little girl, didn't know what I was. Now, when I look back at it, I've always been attracted to people who are overcomers.
Amen.
Not people who settle and say, well, this is the way it is. This everybody is like this. Well, everybody, and fall into this mode of everybody's doing it.
Right.
And I've always been like an oddball because it's like, oh, there's got to be another way. I may not know those folk, but that's not what I want. And what you're doing is sometimes a lonely lifestyle, because even though you have people you love, everybody doesn't feel what you feel when you feel it. So sometimes you are lonely. So you can testify to people and tell them what to expect. It's normal, but it doesn't have to be your life. You can
Right.
win. You can win. Even, I mean, it's just like a person may have a disease, an incurable disease, and but they're living.
Right.
They choose to live, and they choose to be present in every moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I'm
that's
truly
a big
grateful.
grace. Yeah, they're living a
I'm,
true life. So
yes, I'm really grateful.
thank you so much,
Thank
everybody.
you.
You can find Joyce on Facebook. You can find her on Instagram, and just share this, because I just believe there are going to be people who are blessed. Because I tell you, these last few years with politics, COVID, we already had crazy going on anyway. That just amplified things, and people don't all respond to hardships the same way.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't give any excuses for people going around yelling at people for wearing masks or not wearing masks and acting immature. I don't. But I will say this: we're all built differently, and we're all wired differently. And a lot of people were functioning in a way that we thought they were okay until the regulations came down,
Mm-hmm.
wearing the mask and all of that, and being isolated, being, stuck up in the house. We really saw what people could handle and what they couldn't. And I always say, as an educator, many children that hated when we had holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas, because it meant no school. School was their place of safety,
Mm-hmm.
because at home was crazy, and they needed an outlet. So when this lockdown and all of that happened, adults and children many were going out of their minds. So I thank you for sharing, and I'm getting a lot of thanks as well. Thank you. Thank you. Great show. Thank you. Please share. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the conversation. So, yeah, thank you for being open. Thank you for being courageous, because it takes courage to do what you did, because you have people who would rather you just shh, because your story involves other people. You weren't on an island. You were not, So I thank you for having the bravery to move forward anyway. You weren't trying to call people out. You weren't trying to put people on blast, but you
Mm-hmm.
were telling a story to help others overcome and be healed. So thank you so much, Joyce. And everyone, Lord willing, this feedback is getting awful here. But Lord willing, I'll be back next week doing the same thing. All right. And you all be blessed. Have a great week. And
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining. I saw some of my friends on here. I really appreciate that.
awesome. Awesome. And don't forget to share, like, comment. Okay. And if you're on, and go to YouTube and subscribe. Take care, everybody. And happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.